I was working in this small village. So I met a senior gentleman well known to me. So he asked me, what is your daily routine? I say, the factory starts at 7:30. So I reach at 7:28, 7:27. So I leave my house at around 7 o'clock. It takes me 1.5 kilometers, about 27. So he says, you reach at 7:27, the factory starts at. So everybody must be reaching. I said, yeah, everybody reaches at 7. So he says, where do you stand out there? So from next day, I made it an effort to reach the factory at 7:15, because when I reach factory at 7:15, I stand out. Because there are maybe only 2 or 3 employees in the factory who reach at 7:15, 15 minutes before. Since I made this effort, so it did catch the attention. In fact, who was the MD of the plant, he used to come about many times early. Then over a period of time, he noticed, and I think that left a very positive image in his mind also. So this gives me a thought, and I think this is one lesson I still value very much.
Mechanical engineering is the career up for discussion on today's podcast. Our guest today has more than 29 years of experience working in various industries in Germany and India. He has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, a business management degree, and he further did an international business program from the reputed Indian Institute of Management, JOCA, in 2004. He joined the Indian office of the German Engineering Federation as general manager in 1999. He is currently heading the organization as managing director and has increased the export of German machinery to India almost 6-fold during his tenure. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Rajesh Nath on today's podcast and discuss with him the journey of his job. If you haven't checked out the Career Show website, definitely do so. The link is mentioned in the bio. And now, hit that subscribe button and the post notification bell, and let's get started with the exciting journey of Mr. Rajesh Nath. Good afternoon, Mr. Rajesh Nath. Thank you so much for taking the time out and being on the Career Show. Such an honor to have you here with us.
Thank you, Trishank. I feel privileged to be here today on this Career Show, and looking forward to sharing my experience over the years and interacting with you, Trishank. And before you start, Trishank, let me compliment you. I think it's amazing work that you're doing, talking to various professionals and trying to bring the message across to the young professional students on how they should shape up their career path. So wish you a lot of success in this endeavor also, Trishank.
Those kind words mean so much to me. I really appreciate your kind words. So let's get right into it. You got a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Germany. Do you want to talk about why did you pursue a degree in mechanical engineering?
Good question, Trishank. Actually, I think let me go back a little bit. So I was born in a very small town called Naumundi. This is the iron ore belt in India, and my father was connected with the steel industry. So the earlier part of my life, I think till the age of 4 or 5, I was in Bokaro. So the Bokaro steel plant, that was, I used to go with my dad sometimes to the steel plant even as a child. And then during my earlier school days also, my father, since he was also an engineer, he used to get a lot of drawings and all. That time, we did not have the CAD CAM. We used to have these, you had to draw physical on the drawing board. So sometimes he used to get the drawings on the weekends. He had to review the drawings. So I was very intrigued looking at the drawings. And then it triggered off my memory also as a child when I had gone to the Bokaro steel plant. And I think the biggest driving force otherwise was generally, I would also say, Trishank, in our times, the time when I did my engineering, actually the choice was very limited. Either you would go for civil, you would go for mechanical, electrical, electronic, IT. So basically these were the 4 branches. And mechanical was called the EVERGREEN branch. It was one branch where they said you would always have requirement for mechanical engineers. So I think with the background of my influence of my father, his being perhaps my earlier childhood memories of Bokaro and the Bokaro steel plant, and basically that one branch that never goes out. So I think these were the main triggers for me taking up mechanical engineering, Prashant.
I think you brought up an interesting point. You said the mechanical engineering field is evergreen, and you've been hearing that since your childhood. I want to
Right.
ask you, has that really been the case? Has mechanical engineering been evergreen, or have there been ups and downs in the industry?
I think, yes, certainly there would be any industry, there would be ups and downs, Trishant. And I think now with the passage of time, as I said, I did my engineering almost a good, now if I look back 30 years back. So
Wow.
that time the options were very limited. But now I think for the young professional, young students, it's a whole new perspective that they have. I think new applications, automation, field of automation, industry 4.0, machine learning, IoT. I think now the potential is immense. And I think what has changed also, Trishank, is we are moving more towards mechatronics, which is
Mm.
mechanical and electronics combined together. I think this difference between mechanical and electronics, I think this is to some extent getting merged. Therefore, I feel fields like mechatronics have immense scope for the future. And
Mm.
also, with, I think, India, our country also, although we have a huge population and a workforce, but India would need to adopt automation to some extent as we go ahead. And I think with that, the young engineers who have experience in automation, in fact, I would sincerely also tell the young engineers, please look at some of the options besides your core studies. Look at enhancing your knowledge
Mhm.
in certain sectors like automation, machine learning, and try to at least get basic knowledge because I think this is really going to be the field for the future, Prashant.
I think you gave some great advices for people who are pursuing engineering.
Right,
But like you said, there are a lot of fields opened up, a lot of branches opened up within engineering itself.
right.
Do you want to maybe discuss ways and students can decide which particular one is the right one? Should they follow behind the industry that they are passionate about or the industry that's going to be the next big thing out there?
I think my advice here would be, Tushant, follow your passion and your goals. I think passion is more important. See, if
Mm.
you are inclined towards design and parents push you to do civil engineering, it ultimately doesn't really help because
Mm.
neither will you do the civil engineering properly, nor you will be able to pursue your passion. So I think ultimately, you have to look deep into your heart. And I think um, parents are over the period of time, I think much more open now. For example, Trishant, my daughter studies in US, so
Mm.
she's doing psychology. Now
Mhm.
she's got some very interesting subjects related to religion also,
Correct.
and also drama, art. So there is a lot of scope what you have nowadays, which was not there earlier. And I
Mhm.
think students should really look at the possibilities here and add something to it. Like she's also taken up, for example, golf as one of the subjects to get certain credit. So I think those are amazing combinations, what one would not have heard of earlier, what were possible. So my advice would be just follow your passion, look where your interest is, and try to at least follow your interest because ultimately a field where your interest lies, where your passion lies, I think that is the field where you can really give back and
And do great work.
do great work. And maybe just one more line I would like to add: never be a waste. Always be useful to the society in some way or
Mhm.
the other. Whatever education you have done, always look at it how you can utilize that
Mhm.
education and give back something to the society, Prashant.
Fun story. I'm also currently in the middle of deciding whether I want to take golf or basketball next year when I get back to college. But talking about your journey, let's talk about your first job, right? Your first
Right.
job was in Germany. Do you want to talk about how did you land a job in Germany and what was the first company? How was the work like? What are the challenges of your first job in mechanical engineering?
Thanks for taking me back in the memory lane, Prashant. As I said, it's almost a good 30 years back, but yes, it would help to refresh the memory. So mine was it was a very interesting story, Prashant. So I grew up in Calcutta, so a city with about almost 12 to 13 million people. And my first job, I landed in Germany in a small town called Wolfrath. Now, Wolfrath had a population of 20,000.
Wow.
So I moved basically from a city of 12 million to a city of 20,000. I think if I look back at Calcutta, where I grew up, I think our road itself would have had 20,000 people. So going into Wolfrath was a totally different experience for me, but a very nice experience also, I must say. Of course, it was a new country. I think the biggest advantage I had, I stayed with a family, and that really helped me to get a feel of the German culture, the German way of thinking, and improve my language also. So although this family, they knew English, they could speak English quite well, but they insisted on speaking with me in German so that I could improve my German. And this really helped me. And then when I started the job, it was a totally different setup. And the interesting part was, Prashant, my first period almost for, I think it was a 9-month period. So I had the opportunity, it was like an induction or a training in that way. So I had the possibilities of going to various plants and cities. And here, if I may add another very interesting experience, I landed up in a small, I would say a village with 2,000 people. So that was again very interesting. And I stayed in this small town or village for about 3 months. And I think within this, I was the only foreigner in that small village. As it is, there were very few foreigners there in that village. So I was the only foreigner there. And I think within the span of 3 months, Trishank, I think I knew more than 80% of the village. So there was just one. So I used to walk down to the factory. It was a good almost 1.5-2 kilometers because there was no bus in that village. There was absolutely no local transport. So I used to walk down to the village, and there was just one major crossing, and there used to be in the morning there used to be a policeman manning the crossing because a lot of small children. So he saw me a couple of times. I started waving to him. He waved back to me. So within 3 or 4 days, I knew the policeman also quite well. Young people, when you get a job, land up in a small town or a village. I think that has its own charm, and enjoy that period also.
So just a quick point. The reason you ended up getting a job in Germany is because you got a bachelor's degree in Germany, right? Is that correct?
No, actually, I applied in Germany. Okay. So I got this internship for a year initially, and that is how I landed up. And of course, as I mentioned, we have a strong connect. My father studied also in Germany way back in the 50s. So we have a very strong connect with Germany and a lot of family friends in Germany. So I think in a way that had influenced also my interest in Germany and my interest. And of course, my father also really helped out that time because my father had good contacts with this company. So when I applied to it for them, I was not an unknown entity in that sense. So that really helped me also to start off.
I think it is important to highlight here that students actually leverage their network. If they don't have a network, they make a network and then eventually leverage it a lot.
Absolutely.
But let's talk about, I was going through your profile and I came across you working on ground with mineral processing and solid liquid separation. Is that correct?
Absolutely, Prashant.
I found that super interesting. Do you want to take me through how was it working on ground at these plants?
I think here also, if you allow me, I would like to share a couple of very interesting experiences.
Sure.
So solid liquid separation, actually, these machines are the centrifuges. So they separate, and I landed up, this company I was working in, they had these centrifuge applications in sewage plants. So in fact, I have visited quite a few of the sewage plants in Germany, and believe me, they are smelly. So of course, when we compare in Germany, they follow a lot of pollution control norms. So they are not as smelly, but it was a very different experience to land up there working. And when you're working on these machines, actually, Trishank, at the end of the day, we had to clean the machine. So you open the machine and then you have this smell from the sewage coming and spilling. So we had a sort of, it was called the machine was mounted on a truck. So with this truck, we used to go to the various sewage plants. And in fact, we landed at a couple of meat processing units also. So that was another experience because there the smell was totally different from the sewage plant. But again, I would say a very good learning, tough work, no doubt about it, to work in those conditions, but amazing learning. And I think the learning I had in these difficult circumstances, working in these difficult circumstances, I think it did help to shape my career, makes me a lot more flexible. Also, when I came back from Germany to India, so I was working with a company, Mitsui Babcock, which had operations. Actually, they were working in the various power plants. And in India, Trishank, power plants are actually in a lot of remote areas. Correct. And now, of course, connectivity has improved. But if you look back around during my period, 25 years or at least 23 years back, it was very tough moving to go to a remote location. And here I would just like to share one more example. I visited one of the power plants in Punjab in Ropar. So on that particular day, there was a taxi strike. So this power plant was from the city about a good 25 or 30 kilometers. Mm-hmm. So what do? I just had a day actually because I had 2-3 visits planned. So I got hold of a rickshawala and I said, come, let's go. And he was willing. So actually we went on the rickshaw 25 kilometers to the power plant. And since there was no other way of transport, I told him, please wait, I'll finish my meeting and we'll go back in the rickshaw. So I think as a young engineer or as a young graduate, you have to think a little out of the box and go out of your comfort zone. I could have very comfortably sat in the hotel and told my company, okay, there was no strike, I can't do anything. But then I took this option of taking a rickshaw and going to the power plant, and I finished my meeting, got back. Yes, it took much longer, and I was pretty shaken because in the rickshaw, if you travel 25, almost 40 kilometers, so your bones will shake a little bit. But I think that flexibility one has to have in the career and come out of the comfort zone, Prashant. I think that is a very one suggestion I would like to give the young graduates also.
I mean, those stories are so inspirational. But like you mentioned, solid liquid separation was a tough environment to be in. And I'm sure when a lot of students hear about what you just said about separating and the smell, and they would be like, oh no, I don't want to work in that. Do you want to say one or two things that were actually exciting or something that made you work for it? Maybe the learnings or something that made you work in it, despite all the smell and everything.
Right. No, of course. I think for me, one of the pleasures going, because these normally these locations were very nice, where these sewage plants were, because they were not in the city, they were in certain remote locations. So the drive itself was certainly looking at the landscape of the country and going through. Sometimes we had to travel almost 200 kilometers. And I think one of the plants also I visited in this truck, we had gone all the way to Switzerland. And I think one of the most beautiful cities I had visited in Switzerland, Vermont. I think that was a beautiful city. And I have very clear memories, although it's almost 25 years, but I can still have very clear memories of the city. So certainly it was, it was the locational advantages sometimes, but then the whole process, I mean, there was always a new learning, because in fact, it's very different or difficult to explain, but each sludge is different in character. So what we used to do with these, with our machines was, so there's something called flocculants. You have the flocculants, which will help to divide the solid from the liquid. So it was always, you had to try new flocculants. So each sludge in fact was different. So it was always a new learning experience.
Challenge.
Yeah.
I think that's a great reason to be in it, right? But but let's talk about you coming back to India. You're currently
Right.
the managing director of VDMA, as it says in your background, the German Engineering Federation. You spent a majority of your career at this company, and you have increased the export rate sixfolds, as I was reading about you. How important has it been to keep up with the trade policies and learning about them, since you've been in this position for so long and you've increased the exports 6 times?
Certainly, I think the trade policies, the foreign trade policies, the policies of the Indian government, German government, knowledge about that was very relevant, and it was important to keep abreast with the knowledge. But I think the biggest challenge here for me when I started with VDMA, Prashant, so I started with VDMA somewhere in 95, 95, 96. So 25, 24 years back. And that time, Prashant, actually, if you look at India had opened its economy in 91. So we were still not such a strong market as we are today. And the biggest challenge for me was when I was talking to the German companies. They would ask, yeah, what is the need? So my aim was always to get German companies coming to India, get more German investments coming to India. And their initial reaction was, why do we need to come to India? And the market was also not so lucrative that time. And in fact, our exports of German machinery to India in 96 was, I think, only 600 million euros, which we scaled up to almost 3,600 million euros. So I think it's, for me, it has been a very satisfying journey, in the sense that now when I talk to the German companies, our country has developed so well in these last 25 years, become an important market for the European companies. So it's no more a question of why we need to come to India, but where should we start in India? What would be your suggestion? Where could we start our operations in India? So it's very satisfying to see the change in perception in these last 25 years. And this also gives us a certain strength in the Indian market. So I think that's been a really interesting part of the whole journey till now, Prashant.
I'm sure that would be such a proud feeling when you don't have to explain to the Germans, hey, this is the reason. So, I mean, it's proud for me itself. So I'm even sure since you've worked on it, it will be a much prouder feeling for you.
Absolutely.
But do you want to talk about how your mechanical engineering degree has helped you dealing with German engineering companies?
So, Trishant, since we are an engineering association, so VDM is the largest industrial association in Germany. And as an engineering association, VDMA actually covers the complete gamut of the engineering sector. So certainly my background of mechanical engineering has helped me when I interact with the German companies. It gives me an understanding of what the technology they offer and perhaps the application part of it. I think that is very important. Also, my suggestion to all the young graduates or students is, one is, of course, the knowledge, what you try to get during your study. But more important is to see how you can utilize the application aspect, the knowledge, how it can be used in real life applications. And I think this is where, if I look at Germany and India, Prashant, this is one of the big differences that the German education system has, is that it's a lot of the there is a lot of practical aspects going into the education.
Correct.
So students get the opportunity to do internships. Companies are very open to accepting students who want to do internships. And it's not, internships in India, unfortunately, when we talk about internship, it's just, okay, you go to, even if you land up in a factory, it's just you're taking a round of the factory, you're making some notes. Whereas in Germany, it's actually hands-on working. You are an apprentice. You're either given a machine to work on, or you're associated with the machine operator. So with him, you're actually dirtying your hands and faces when you're working. And I think that is where German technology, when we talk about German technology being the best in the world, So I think this cutting edge has come because the whole system is so geared up that you get a good practical knowledge. And when an engineer from Germany comes out after his graduation, so he has theory knowledge, no doubt, but he has a rich experience in practical knowledge also. So hands-on knowledge is there. So he can basically, employability increases, Ishan. And the company can start utilizing within maybe 1 or 2 months, perhaps he needs to understand the organization. But then from the second or third month, he starts giving value to the organization. So actually, we keep on talking about unemployment in our country. But I think unemployment is not such an issue. It is the employability of the graduates that is a bigger issue, what we have to face with. Because the education system, I think, needs to change, and the young graduates, especially who are studying engineering, I can only speak from that experience, they should themselves be more proactive. Take initiative, go, why don't you try, rather than doing an internship in the comfort of your home and just doing some research. Go out, speak to the industry, try to use your network. And I think people are very open. If you show a certain degree of interest, people are surely open to give you 2 or 3 months internship. I think these are experiences. If you can gather that time, it will really help you in your career later on. Prashant.
No, I completely agree with you. But something that I want to touch on is that you mentioned that VDMA is an association.
Right.
What is the future of associations? Have you thought about this? How are they important? And how does the future look like for association?
Right. So one of our main aim is also, Prashant, to help German companies coming to India. So we give them information about the Indian market, as well as the German companies who are here in India. And I think the role of association is very important because it is like the first point of contact for the members. So if you want certain information on the industry, on market, or to give you a general, for example, our members in Germany, if they want to have an overview of how the Indian market is, what is the GDP growth in India, which sectors are potential. So we provide that information, and that gives them much more concrete and deeper knowledge in the strategy planning for the future.
Correct.
In fact, we can also go one step ahead, tell them where, okay, if your products are for this, for example, automotive industry, then your main customer base would be Pune or Chennai.
Correct.
Or Bangalore. You can look to have a setup there. So I think the associations play a very important role, but the association also has to be abreast and informed about what is happening. So I think an association's value comes when the association itself is proactive. And I think that is what we are very proud. I'm very proud of our team at VDMA India, that although we are a small team, but I think we are a very engaged team. All the colleagues, be it junior, senior colleagues, all make the effort to keep themselves abreast with what is happening in the country, what are the policies, what are the economic policies. And that is why when we meet our members, we can give them updated knowledge, and that is what our members value, this interaction and the information provided by VDMA.
No, I think you're doing a really, really great job. I
Thank
think
you.
associations are something similar to communities, which is the term that is coming up these days.
Right.
It's just different words, but the agenda is same for both.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I want to ask you this: if not VDMA, what would you have done with your bachelor's in mechanical engineering? Have you ever given that a thought?
Actually, when I joined VDMA, to be very honest with you, Prashant, so I came from the industry. So I was into hardcore industrial sales and market. So when I joined the association, I thought, okay, it's good, but maybe 5 years or so I would stick with this. But then it's something that really, over the time, it grows on you. And I think what really helps is the association work is very different in nature from a typical. There is much more diversity in the work you're doing, dealing with new challenges on a very regular basis. It's not a run-of-mill that's a typical, if you're in projects that you're doing project planning, let's say for 6 months or 1 year, but we have to undertake a lot of different activities and think out of the box, come with new ideas how you can support the members. And I think when I joined VDMA, I would have said that, yes, I'm not sure how it will go ahead, but now spending almost a good 24 years with VDMA, I think it's a very interesting, the association work is also very interesting. So unfortunately, I would not have a very clear answer now whether what I would have done if I had not joined VDMA.
People learn when they try out different things, and you never
Absolutely.
know you like something until you try it. And I think that's been a
Absolutely.
huge part of this conversation between us, is that keep on trying things. That's so
Yeah.
important.
And be open. I think, Prashant, that is my biggest this thing. Be open to new ideas. Don't go as a young person with very fixed ideas. You have to be flexible.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I have one last question for you, and that
Sure.
is, what is one advice you wish you had received before you started your career journey?
I would say, let me come back to a couple of good advice what I had received, which I would like to share with our audience, because I think this has very deep implications also. So Trishank, as I was mentioning, I was working in the small village. So I met a senior gentleman whom I admire very much in Germany. He was a German gentleman, well known to me. So he asked me, so you're going to that factory. So what is your daily routine? I say, the factory starts at 7:30. So I reach at 7:28, 7:27. So I leave my house at around 7 o'clock. It takes me 1.5 kilometers, about 27 minutes. So he says, you reach at 7:27, the factory starts at. So everybody must be reaching. I said, yeah, everybody reaches at 7:30. So he says, where do you stand out then? So this gives me a thought, and I think this is one lesson I still value very much, and I still think back. Where do you stand out? You're once amongst many who are going at 7:20, between 7:25 and 7:30. So it made me think, Trishank, and then from next day, in fact, I made it an effort to reach the factory at 7:15, because when I reach factory at 7:15, I stand out. Because there are maybe only 2 or 3 employees in the factory who reach at 7:15, 15 minutes before. And this shows a certain interest in the work also. Your determination and interest to excel. And I think this is one big lesson that I still carry with me, and I also advise our young colleagues, and whenever I meet youngsters, look at doing things. See, if you're doing things what everybody is doing, then there is no way you can really stand out in the crowd. Look at doing things, and this is a very small, in fact, a very small action actually, Prashant. Only thing, I had to get up 15-20 minutes early and start 15-20 minutes early. But then, since I made this effort, so it did catch the attention. In fact, who was the MD of the plant, he used to come about many times early. So he used to see my room lights in my cabin on, and he used to peep in and said, "Hi, you've come already." I said, "Yes, I'm there." And then over a period of time, he noticed, and I think that left a very positive image in his mind also, about a young Indian engineer who's there and working hard. So that's one advice. And the second advice, or also what I think is, so your attitude will determine your altitude. I think this is for the young engineers or for young graduates. Always go with the attitude, because see, any work you do, Trishank, after a few years, actually, it's only 20% knowledge and 80% is your attitude towards the work. And especially as a young graduate, when you're starting something new, be open. And that is where your attitude towards the work, as I said, I could have, and this learning on these machines, when I spoke about the sewage plants, I could have done a few of those or just done 1 or 2, because I was in an internship period. But then I did it over an extended period of almost 3 to 4 months, visiting various sewage plants. So I think ultimately it's going to be your attitude which will take you ahead in career. because skills you can always get with a job, and each new job you can develop new skills. But attitude is something which has to come from within you. And that's why I strongly feel that attitude will determine your altitude, how high you rise in life. And that would be my concluding statement, Prashant.
The first advice you gave actually gave me chills, and the entire story was simply inspirational, and it actually gave me a learning as well.
Thank
Two
you.
small things to stand out. So I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Mr. Rajesh Nath, for coming onto the Career Show. It's been lovely discussing the journey of your job.
Thank you. Thank you, Prashant, for having me on this show, and wishing all our viewers and wishing you also the very best in life, and continue the good work you are doing. And to all our viewers, be open, go with I think with clear ideas what you want to do. And I think if on the path of success, there's nothing that can stop you if you are determined to reach your goals. Thank you. Goodbye.
I hope you enjoyed this week's career discussion. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Also, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Your support means a lot.